Welcome into the show now. Krysten Peak of Yahoo Sports, fresh off the call of the French Professional LNB Borgen race against Nanterre, where Zachary Rizachet, a projected top 3 pick in the NBA draft, joins us now. Krysten, thanks for taking some time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So it's been a busy week for you. A little on-call action there with Kevin Dana calling the French League, but also the NBA Combine. What are kind of the news, notes, highlights that you've experienced this week with the behind the scenes, as it were, as the draft slotting situations start to unroll?
I mean, I guess the biggest story coming out of the draft combine has to be Bronny James and the fact that he, kind of silenced all critics and showed that he does belong in this draft. And, regardless of if it's going to be a package deal with his dad or not, he performed very well, particularly in the scrimmages yesterday, led his team with 13 points and really settled in. And then in the first day, he was the second best shooter in the 3-point star drill, made 12 in a row and finished going 19 for 25 from deep. So he was kind of the surprise coming out of the draft. And then, of course, just me breaking news about a certain team, Utah Jazz, being interested in bringing him in and possibly taking him at 32. So I think we're going to start seeing some second-round interest from other teams to kind of bait the Los Angeles Lakers and say, hey, if you really want him, you're going to have to get in front of us, or what are you going to give us if we give you Bronny after drafted?
As he has a good combine, we saw what he was at USC, which he came off the bench for Andy Enfield at USC in his 1 year there. What is the realistic view, if he was anybody else, where Bronny would be going? Because 32 seems pretty high for a guy who came off the bench and scored 5 points a game in college.
I feel like fans need to just forget the season at USC ever happened, not only for Bronny, but also for Isaiah Collier. And I think people are quick to forget that Bronny James had open heart surgery in August and was back on the court playing in his first game in December. That is unheard of. I don't know if you remember Sharif O'Neal. He had a similar surgery. He was out for the entire year. He had to redshirt. So the fact that he came back, started playing in December, playing catch-up, trying to learn the offense, trying to get back to game shape, learn the pace of the college game, he was a shell of himself. I have been covering Bronny now for 5 years, since the time he was 14. I'm not taking anything, with a grain of salt of what we saw from his time at USC. I think what he did at the combine and how he was able to overcome despite all the adversity is what I think people really need to look at. And yes, is a lot of the attention and maybe, the looks that he's getting higher in the second round because of his dad and because of a potential package deal. Absolutely. But you have to put yourself in LeBron's shoes. He's a father. He's trying to do everything he can to help his son succeed. And, if that's, I will come and play with him, then so be it.
Yeah. Krysten, the Trailblazers have got picks 7 and 14, and already I think the consensus is solidifying around number 1 for sure with Alex Sarr, and likely number 2 with possibly Rizachet going to the Wizards. After that, whether it's you or a host of others doing draft content right now, there is just almost no consensus from essentially 3 through 12. What do you kind of see being the inflection points? Because as I sit down to do my own mock drafts, I look down, I went pick 3, pick 6, pick 9, and pick 10. It's kind of inflection points in the top 14 of like where things can really go a little crazy, because you might see teams do something there that you might not see.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the year that there's so much uncertainty. Like I felt it in the room at the draft lottery room when the Atlanta Hawks won. It wasn't like last year where there were cheers and everybody was excited. It was almost like, oh, this is the year, the 1 year we win the number 1 pick. It has to be this year, sandwiched in between Victor Wembanyama and probably Cooper Flagg next year. So I don't even think the number 1 spot is safe. Yes, Alex Sarr is probably going to be the number 1 pick, but they have options. And then from there, like you said, from 3 to 10, it's choose your own adventure, right? And I think the farther you are away from that 1, 2, 3, and 4, the better off you are as a franchise, because then there's no pressure on you to make that decision. This is going to be one of those drafts where there are going to be some guys that are dudes and players that hit, but there's also going to be a lot of role players and potential busts. So you don't want to be that team picking the ladder, right? So if you are Portland at 7 and at 14, then I think Portland fans should be very happy about it, unless, you really like Stephon Castle, because I think he'll be off the board at least by 5 or 6.
So at 7 and potentially at 14, where do you see the draft board kind of falling? Because, it's a weird draft, and with the prospects the way that they are, some teams will covet certain skill sets differently, and it's not going to be a standard pecking order like we've seen before. How do you think it's going to fall when the draft board gets down to 7 to Portland?
Absolutely. I mean, you guys have, 3 picks this year? Don't you have a
4.
second-round pick as well?
Yeah,
4 picks.
Yeah.
2 and 2. Man, what a draft to have 4 picks. But with 7, I think, if you guys need some help inside, if Donovan Clinton is there, which I don't think he will be, but if he is, I think he's a good option at 7. And if you want to add some length to the wings, Modest Buzelis or Ron Holland, if they're there around 7, 8, Cody Williams is another good option. He's kind of a project, but you look at what his older brother is doing, how effective he's been defensively with this young Oklahoma City team. I think there's promise there. So there's a lot of options at 7, and I think at 12 you can look at Tijan Solon, another French player who played the best game of his career last night in a win over Paris, an upset win. So a lot of teams he's going to be like the Bilal Coulibaly of the draft, where he just steadily climbs leading up to the end of June.
You mentioned Ron Holland, and he's a G League Ignite guy, very similar to Scoot Henderson, which the Blazers took at 3rd this past year. With the G League Ignite closing their doors, what was the kind of the buzz around the combine, and what has been the view in evaluators of the G League Ignite players and kind of what their standing is?
That G League Ignite team, it was bad. It was even hard for me to evaluate it. I'm not the one making decisions. So if it's bad for me, I know it's bad for teams. I think a lot with Modest and Ron will ride on the pre-draft process and individual workouts. It just takes one team, right? So, but as high school prospects, both Ron and Modest were top 5, top 10 players coming out of high school. They both were solid at McDonald's and then again at Nike Hoop Summit. So there's been longevity in terms of the evaluation for both those players. And even Modest, I said, are you doing your pro day? And he goes, why do I need to do a pro day? I mean, I walk into these team meetings and I know half of them because I've been seeing in the gym. I've been seeing them in the gym watching me for the last 3 years. Like they already know everything they need to know about my game. So with those two, I think a lot will be riding on what happens individually for them between now and the draft.
Krysten, when you take a look at this draft, there's not only the diversification in that 2 through 10 spot, but it really post lottery to the end of the first round. I think you can slot really a lot of different guys up, down, left, or right, whether it's for legal reasons with Terrence Shannon or with somebody taking a look at Dadier, the French guard, as a guy who can skyrocket up the boards. When you kind of look at how this is all shaping up, how much do you think teams are going to be active in trying to move around and slot for the guy that they want?
You hit it right on the mark. I know, even just now, after seeing one player in particular the last 2 days, I was talking to, a front office exec, and they just said, I love this player. We want this player. And, it was one of those in between the mid-first round to 35 range where you said you could pretty much insert 40 different players, and it wouldn't surprise me if Zach Edey went 40 or if he went 15. Like nothing, I don't think is going to surprise me at all this year because we've seen it the entire season. We've been waiting for at least 1 or 2 players to make that jump, and we haven't seen it yet. But in terms of, just the versatility of this draft, like I said, there are going to be dudes. And the second day, especially now that it's a 2-day draft, you are going to see teams making moves for whatever guy they want, because now you've got extra time to make the decision. It's no longer 3 minutes. You have a full 24 hours plus another 5 minutes to decide who you want in that second round.
We are joined by Krysten Peak, Yahoo Sports NBA draft analyst. Krysten, taking a look at this class, there's always one. Last year it was Jaime Jaquez, the guy that everyone went, yeah, duh. The guy was good at X, Y, and Z. So yeah, him being good at the NBA level isn't shocking. Who is that guy in this class? Is it Tristan da Silva? Is it Deron Holmes? Who do you kind of see as being that guy that hits the ground running right out of the gates?
Tristan da Silva is a good name. He's someone that's steadily climbing up. Even now, I mean, they're doing their pro days, and I wish I would have known this when I decided to stay in Chicago till Friday. They're not letting media into the pro days this year, so
awesome.
Which is why I have time to talk to you guys. But Tristan da Silva is someone who shot very well, performed very well during the agility test on day one of the combine. I think he's going to be a steady climber. I'm not sure he has that dog in him the way Jaime did at UCLA. I mean, I remember going to every single summer run in LA when Jaime, by the time he was a freshman to senior, and he was there. He chases competition. You're not hearing about Tristan da Silva, but he does have a very intriguing skill set with his size and the way he can put the ball on the floor and shoot the three. So he could be the guy. I think Jared McCain could be the guy. I mean, just he's on the smaller side, but shoots lights out, has won at every level, figures it out. Very, very smart player. So when we're looking at Reed Shepherd, we're looking at Rob Dillingham that are projected in that lottery top 10 range. I think Jared McCain could end up being the best out of those three.
Oh, wow.
You know, so much happens and conversations start about player movement at combines and in the pre-draft process as guys are getting evaluated. Next year's draft is so highly touted and those picks are so highly coveted that we may not see first round picks for 2025 being moved in any of this player transactions that we may see this offseason. What was the conversation about maybe some of the deals that are going to be made where it may look a little wonky because teams wanting to trade down this year, you're not getting a first next year or for even a big player because of that 2025 class?
You're not getting a player in next year's draft or the year after, because after Cooper Flagg, you got AJ DeBonsa, who's coming up, who's going to be a franchise-changing player. You've got Cameron Boozer coming up. So I would say even in the next two drafts, it's going to be hard to say, we're going to move down. You can move up to our spot. We want a first-round pick. You're going to be hard-pressed to find any franchise that's going to say, yeah, let's make this deal. In this draft and what it's projected to be, I feel comfortable making that deal. I don't think you're going to find that. You're absolutely right. It's going to be more of second rounds or, just different trades with players trying to offload their roster or anything like that. I don't think we're going to see future first-round picks kind of in the swaps for the next two drafts.
Don't the Thunder and Jazz own like all of the second round picks for the next 2 years anyways?
I know, man. Sam Presti, he knew. Remember when he offloaded all of that and collected, he started just like hoarding picks, and we're like, what is he doing? And now you're seeing this OKC team come up and you're like, man, Sam Presti is a genius. Like, I don't understand how he sees it all, but everything he does makes sense. And, it's just, I think teams are now playing catch up, trying to take a rule from his book and draft the same sort of talent that he's been able to around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet Holmgren.
I just want to make sure I track down the devil that him and Danny Ainge made deals with, because it's paying off for both of them in the long run.
Dude, they were like scouting 6th grade AAU tournaments years ago, and we're like, I see it all in front of me.
Okay, Pete, thanks for taking time for us. We appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of the draft prep period, and we'll catch up with you in a couple weeks, all right?
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks. That's Krysten Peak, Yahoo Sports NBA draft analyst, taking some time to join us, freshly off the NBA Combine and making the call in the French Professional League.
Look, that is very busy, and the fact she got locked out of pro days, she's now watching Zachary Sachet.
Yeah, that's an interesting turn of events, because the pro days used to be kind of scattered around, but now they've made them more central, and everybody's like, oh, awesome.
Perfect.
But then they went last second. And we're
No.
like, just front offices.
I'm really interested to see how this draft board plays out because Ron Holland is where she has mocked Portland at 7. Measured at 6'5", 6'4", 6
No, 6'5" and a half.
6'5"
I'm sorry,
and a half?
6'6" and a half.
6'6"
So
and a half.
barefoot. So he's
Listed at-
6'7".
Listed at 6'8" for the G League Ignite.
He's 6'7".
He is 6'7". He's a slender man. And if anybody went to the Les Schwab Invitational a couple of years ago, I had the privilege of calling his Duncanville versus West Lynn LSI championship game. Dude can ball, but it's the frame that has a lot of people wondering about durability in the NBA. But there was a skinny kid from Texas that turned out to be a pretty good scorer in the NBA, but Ron Holland isn't 6'10" or 7 feet,
7 foot,
like Kevin
or one of the
Durant.
best shooters we've ever seen.
Yeah, that's
actually the complete opposite.
It is really weird to see how quickly the G League Ignite went from being so
go do this
valuable
thing
to
gone.
shuttered.
Yeah.
Like, boom.
Well, it was a way to launder money to kids without,
Well, it was before
NIL,
NIL. And then you had the one I really feel bad for is the kids that went and played in Carmelo Anthony's
the OTE.
OTE, Overtime Elite. Like, you're not getting the exposure, the development.
Nothing.
And
Thompson twins went there, but they worked out well for them.
Yeah, it did.
So-
It did. But that was they got in right at the infancy of NIL, and now kids are like, dude, I'll just go to Duke.
Yeah. I'll get a much higher profile and more money.
That's right, because they're not paying Coach K $10 million a year anymore. They got money.
Shire's a little cheaper.
That's right.